Join me tonight on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern where we will play NFL Trivia for cash prizes. Link to play below. And now, on with our feature presentation. This player right here is none other than tight end Dave Casper, widely regarded as one of the greatest tight ends in the history of professional football. I'd be here all day if I listed every single accomplishment and every single accolade of Casper's career. But long story short, throughout the 1970s, there was perhaps no tight end in football who was more feared and who was more widely respected than he was. He was named the first-team All-Pro in 4 consecutive seasons from 1976 to 79, made it to 5 straight Pro Bowls from 1976 to 80, won Super Bowl 11 as a member of the Oakland Raiders in 1976, even catching a touchdown pass during that game, and his goes to the post play in double overtime of the 1977 divisional round against the Baltimore Colts is widely regarded as one of the most iconic and memorable plays in the history of the NFL. He's a member of the All-1970s first team, he's a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame after rightfully getting inducted in 2002, and is an NFL legend in every sense of the word. And seeing as he played on the Raiders throughout the 1970s, I think it's fair to say that he played on some pretty good teams. From 1974 to 79, in his 6 full seasons in Oakland, his team never had a losing record, and was consistently, whether it was under head coach John Madden or Tom Flores, one of the most formidable opponents in football. They made it to 4 straight AFC championships from 1974 to 77 in Casper's first 4 seasons there. And then, when he went to the Houston Oilers in 1980, Casper joined a team that had an 11-5 record and made it to the playoffs. Combine that with Casper's time at Notre Dame, where he played 4 seasons with the Fighting Irish, went 37-6, and went undefeated in 1973 by going 11-0 and winning the national championship by winning the Sugar Bowl. And yeah, Casper knows what good football looks like. As Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard. And especially throughout the 1970s with the quality of the team around him, not many players embody that more than Casper. Having said that, when you know what good football looks like, it's also pretty easy to tell what bad football looks like, and when something's not right. One of the best parts about a new season is the fact that you have hope. No matter how bad you were last year, everyone starts at 0-0, and anything is possible. But in the eyes of Dave Casper, in 1982, when it came to his Houston Oilers, that was not going to be the case. Because in training camp, when Casper talked about the Oilers and what to expect this season, he delivered a quote that was sure to make even the most optimistic of Oiler fans pessimistic about the season, and delivered a press conference where, without any hint of sarcasm whatsoever, he talked about how much his team is going to stink, and how much the passing game was going to stink. How inspiring. Because this is the story behind what might just be the craziest moment of the legendary tight end Dave Casper's career. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand how the Houston Oilers did the year before, because that will give us some idea as to why Casper felt the way that he did. And as you're going to be able to tell from these highlights, or should I say lowlights, you'll have a pretty good indication of just how bad Houston was. Whether firing Bum Phillips after the 1980 season was the right call for his refusal to hire an offensive coordinator is still a hot topic for debate more than 40 years later. However, all of that can go away if the successor comes in and does as good of a job, if not better, than the previous guy. For all the rightful flack the Chargers got for firing Marty Schottenheimer after a 14-2 season in 2006, Norv Turner took them to the AFC Championship the next year, getting them further than Schottenheimer ever did. For all the flack that the Browns got for firing Paul Brown, Landon Collier was a heck of a coach, and you could make a legitimate argument that he should be in the Hall of Fame. As for the Oilers, not so much. Because for the first time ever, Casper played on a team with a losing record, and a bad team at that, as after 4 straight seasons with a winning record, and 3 straight seasons making the playoffs, the Oilers crashed by going 7-9 in 1981, and by finishing the season going 3-7 in their final 10 games. And while there were many reasons for the Oilers being a bad team, not the least of which was their defense, which went from one of the best in football to one of the worst, perhaps none were bigger than their inability to get anything going in the passing game. What you're watching right now was the norm for the entire season. The Oilers started 3 different quarterbacks in 1981, starting Ken Stabler, Gifford Nielsen, and John Reeves. None of them had a winning record or did anything of note, and combined, they threw 21 touchdowns and 23 interceptions, with a negative touchdown-to-interception ratio. If you count all the picks that opposing teams dropped, it could have been at least 40 picks. Out of 28 teams in football, the Oilers finished 23rd in passing yards. In one game against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Oilers finished with -4 net passing yards. Yes, you heard that right. -4 net passing yards. I was not even born in 1981, and yet, I had more net passing yards on that day than the Oilers. In the NFL, the league-wide average in passing yards per game was roughly 204 yards, meaning that you could expect a team to throw at a minimum at least 200 yards over the course of 60 minutes. The Oilers fell below that mark 11 times, and only twice did they even throw for 250 yards or more in a game, with one of them being the final week of the season when neither team had anything to play for. No one, especially in the passing game, thrived in that offense, especially Casper, as even though he caught 8 touchdowns, he put up the fewest receptions and fewest receiving yards since 1975, when he was a backup in Oakland behind Bob Moore. Ed Biles was clueless as a head coach. The offense was even worse than it was in 1980, which is tough to believe, and everything was just a giant mess. But look, that was 1981. Now we're in 1982. We've exited the year of Betty Davis size, and we've entered the year of physical. It's a brand new season, which can pose an opportunity for the Oilers to fix the problems in the passing game that plagued them all throughout the previous season. Everyone likes to drink from the fountain of hope before the season and hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the year. Heck, the 49ers and Bengals were terrible in 1980, and look at where they finished the 1981 season in the Super Bowl. The Jets and Giants had 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft, and they turned it around to both make the playoffs. Could the same thing happen to the Oilers in 1982? Well, according to Dave Casper, not a chance in the world. No shot. Because in Casper's eyes, right at the end of July near the start of training camp, he saw the writing on the wall. In no uncertain terms, this team and this passing game was going to stink. Now, before I go any further, I should note that Casper is somewhat biased here, seeing as he had become disenchanted with the sport by this point, actually flat out hating it to the point where it was giving him anxiety and causing him psychological problems. As Casper said, "I haven't liked football in a long time. Not since high school. We're literally wasting time in practice, and I don't even like the games. The games scare the hell out of me. I'm a wreck mentally and physically after games. I get a little more schizo every year." But he was also very blunt on the problems with the Oilers in 1981, calling the entire 1981 season strange, and saying that it was the kind of season that will drive people crazy. He also criticized the coaching staff, saying, "We had a practice theory that was really crazy. Everybody was trying to learn how to practice rather than how to play the games." And he criticized the talent on the team, saying, "People said this team was supposed to be great, but I didn't see it." So let's just say that by this point in 1982, Casper was not exactly the happiest of campers. But no one saw what was about to come out of his mouth next. Not many people thought the Oilers were going to be good in 1982. They were listed at plus 3,000 odds to win the Super Bowl, which was the 8th worst odds of any team. And you could count Dave Casper as one of those non-believers. Because according to him, the Oilers had no passing game whatsoever to speak of. Alright, maybe I'm overreacting. I'm sure what he said couldn't have been that bad, and holy crap, he actually said that. Oh my goodness. A kindergarten level? The Oilers' passing attack is at a kindergarten level? As in, the level where you're crying if you run out of juice in your juice box? You're learning to go to the bathroom by yourself? And when you're learning how to count to 100? That's an awfully good sign. Oh man, that's an awfully good sign. And no, the quote was not taken out of context. This wasn't Casper saying that the team was going to play at a kindergarten level because they were going to go back to basics and not try and do too much, or anything like that. In fact, just the opposite. He truly meant a kindergarten level. Casper was pretty blunt with his assessment of the team, saying, "We're not going to come right back. If anyone on this team thinks that, they've got sand in their eyes." He also added on how bad the passing game was. "Since the first day I came here, the Oilers haven't had what I call a refined passing game. I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about everybody being on the same page. The passing game has always had the problem that the routes aren't technique conscious. It was like you just go out somewhere between 10 and 20 yards and turn right. It made for very undisciplined receivers." He also took a shot at the coaching staff in the process, the way they structure practice, and their knowledge by saying on his time in Oakland for a comparison, the Raiders would take receivers off the street, free agents, and in 3 days, they would play better because of their technique than the receivers we have. They didn't waste time on funny, stupid drills. They worked on specifics. The repetition was great. And then came the quote that caught the NFL world by storm, the kindergarten quote. As Casper said, "I thought our receiving work was rudimentary, if that's the right word. Kindergarten level. I'm not talking about the theory or the mentality behind it, just the technique. It was like drawing pictures by paint with numbers, or connecting the dots." Well, that's what Oilers fans could expect in 1982, according to their star tight end. A kindergarten-level passing game. A bad team where you're delusional if you think they're going to be good because the coaching staff is clueless, and because the passing game is akin to the age where I can become the world's funniest comedian by just farting and saying doo-doo over and over again. So did Casper know what he was talking about? Did the Hall of Fame tight end who knew what a good passing game looked like and what a bad passing game looked like have good insight as to the 1982 Oilers? Well, considering the fact that the Oilers ended the 1982 season by winning 1 game and by finishing with the second worst record in football, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that yes. Yes, he did. Houston went 1-8 during the abbreviated strike-shortened season, and along with boasting the 5th worst offense in football by averaging just 15.1 points per game, shocker, their passing game was terrible. Out of 28 teams, aside from the team finishing dead last in the NFL in total yardage, the Oilers finished 26th in yards per attempt, 21st in interceptions thrown, and 19th in passing yards. The team's passer rating of 66 was the 8th worst total in the league, and the 39 sacks the team took was the 2nd most of any team in football, only better than the Kansas City Chiefs, who took 40. In 1982, their offense, and especially their passing game, was ugly with a capital U, as Dave Casper was not far off when he said that this was a kindergarten-level passing game. Oddly enough, the lone bright spot that could somewhat salvage this passing game by leading the team in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns was none other than Dave Casper himself. He's the only one that put up at least semi-respectable numbers, so you can't say he didn't do his part to try and at least somewhat fix this mess. But it was not enough. Not even close. The Houston Oilers were a bad football team in 1982. You could make the argument that this was the worst season in franchise history, and even though there are some serious contenders, like 1972, 1973, 1983, 1994, and countless others, I'm not going to disagree with you if you think that 1982 was the worst of the bunch, and was the true low point from an on-the-field quality standpoint. And if you want to learn more about just how bad the Oilers were that season, click the card in the upper right corner. But if you listened to the words of Casper before the season started, then this should not have come as a surprise to you, or to anyone for that matter. because the 1982 Oilers win column and kindergartners had a lot in common, in that it was awfully tough for them to count past the number 1. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.